I'm here to talk about peduncle. In a garden, a peduncle is just a fancy word for the stem of a flower. But this peduncle is an exciting new game. In this video, I'll show you the basic rules for playing peduncle. It's a unique tile placement game where flowers climb high, and so does the excitement. Peduncle is best suited for ages 8 to adult and is usually played with 1 to 4 players, although partner play can be just as fun. The object of peduncle is to score the most points. You earn points by, quote, completing flowers. Completing a flower is done just by matching. You match the number and shade of leaves on each flower tile with dark leaf tiles and light leaf tiles. The picture on each flower tells you how many leaves and the shade of the leaves that you need to play to complete that flower. For example, to complete this flower, which shows 3 dark leaves and 2 light leaves, you must surround it with 3 dark green tiles and 2 light green tiles. Notice that the position of the leaves around the flower tile do not have to match up with the placement of the leaf tiles around the flower. Leaves can go anywhere around the flower. Just make sure that the number and shade are correct. Now let's talk about scoring points. Points are based on the number of leaves on the flower tile. I'll repeat that. Points are based on leaf count. So 2 leaves around a flower earns 2 points. 3 leaves earns 3 points. 4 leaves is worth 4 points. 5 leaves gets you 5 points. And 6 leaves is worth 6 points. By the way, that number in the center of each flower has nothing to do with the points. That number is there mostly for easy identification, and I'll talk more about those central numbers at the end of this video. Let's take a look at what is inside the peduncle bag. When you open peduncle, you'll find 165 game tiles. These tiles are separated into different groups as follows. First, there are 65 leaf tiles, 26 dark green leaf tiles, and 39 light green leaf tiles. These leaf tiles will be used by all players. Next, there are 4 different colored sets called color clusters. Each color cluster has 25 tiles per cluster, and those are divided up into 20 flower tiles, 3 butterflies, and 2 weeds. Along with the game tiles, you'll also find 4 tile trays, 4 point charts, and a printed set of rules. During play, scores are recorded and tallied, so you will need a paper and pencil or a scorekeeping app of some type. All right, let's talk about setup. First, decide who will be the scorekeeper. Make sure that the scorekeeper has a scorekeeping app or paper and pencil. Each player takes 1 tray and 1 flower cluster. Opening the flower cluster, you place the cluster tiles face down at random in front of you. The tray will hold the tiles from which you must play when it is your turn. Next, place a light green leaf and a dark green leaf in the center of the table with the sides touching. These are the starter tiles. All leaf tiles are placed in draw piles on the table, so leaves can be in stacks, bags, bowls. It doesn't matter, just so they are easy to reach for all players. To decide who starts, each player draws 1 tile at random from their cluster. The player with the highest number in the center of the flower goes first. Now we should note here that butterflies beat any number and weeds lose to any number. Return that tile that you chose to your cluster and shuffle it in so you don't know its location. Next, each player will set up their own tray. Each player randomly draws 4 tiles from their flower cluster and places those tiles on their tray. They study those flowers. They study the leaves around those flowers. They choose 4 leaves from the leaf draw pile. Take care in choosing leaves. Choose leaves that will complete at least 1 of your flower tiles. After each turn, you will replenish your tray to a maximum of 8 tiles. Note, you don't always have to have 4 flowers and 4 leaves. You can have any mix, 3 to 5, 1 to 7, whatever, just never more than 8 tiles on your tray. The first player places a flower from their tray next to at least 1 of the starter tiles on the table. The player then completes that flower using leaves from his or her tray. The player then calls out the points that he or she earned for that play. For example, the player plays this flower, which has 4 leaves, so the player calls out 4 points. The scorekeeper records the points, and then the player replenishes their tray to 8 tiles. It's now the next player's turn. Let's say that you are the next player. You place this tile next to at least 1 leaf on the table, but in this case, you're going to put it in between 2. You complete your flower using leaves from your tray, and then you call out 6 points to the scorekeeper because the flower you just completed has 6 leaves. Play continues clockwise around the table, with each player completing a flower, calling out points, and then replenishing their tray. And here's one thing to note. Each team must play their first flower of the game directly on the tabletop. And that is the very simple basis of Pedunkle. Complete the flowers, count the leaves, score the points. But of course, Pedunkle has a few plot twists to multiply the fun. The first fun twist is that Pedunkle is a flower climbing game where flowers are played on top of flowers that are already on the table. This is where Pedunkle really gets exciting. When you stack flowers, you earn more points. In fact, you multiply the point values by the height of the stack. So, good thing to remember, when you stack up a flower, you rack up the points. Here's an example of a stacking play. This flower is already completed on the table. On your turn, you can play on top of that flower with this flower. You complete the new flower by placing just 1 more leaf. In this case, it's a dark leaf. Now here's the scoring. Since you just played a stack that is 2 tiles high, you double that top flower's point value. 4 leaves times 2 tiles high gives you 8 points. Here's another example. Let's say you play a flower with 6 leaves on top of a stack that is 3 tiles high. Your score for that single play is 6 leaves times a 4th level stack. Multiply 6 times 4. That's 24 points. By the way, a point chart for each team is included to keep scoring super simple. Stacking flowers is one element that makes Pedunkle so fun. And the good news? There's no limit to stacking. So stacks get higher and higher and higher. Another cool rule twist is a play called pedunkling. In general, you can only play 1 flower per turn. Unless, of course, you can peduncle. Occasionally, a beneficial arrangement of tiles on the table will allow you to play 2 flowers on 2 separate stacks in 1 turn. 2 flowers are separated by a single leaf space. You have 2 flowers that you can play on each of those adjacent flowers while connecting them with a single leaf in between. You place 1 leaf simultaneously between 2 flowers, and then you complete both flowers with more leaves if necessary. You just pedunkled! And the best part of pedunkling is that, of course, you get points for completing both connected flower stacks. Okay, it is time to talk about those other 2 tiles in your color cluster, the butterflies and the weeds. Butterflies are benefit tiles. They allow you to raise the height of a stack before you play your flower. For example, it's your turn and you have your eye on this 3rd level stack. With your butterfly, you first raise the level of the stack to the 4th level. Now you play your flower, raising that flower to the 5th level. 6 leaves times 5 tiles high is 30 points. Now that is a fun play. Butterflies have one other advantage. If you choose, a butterfly allows you to first level up, but then you can remove leaves with a butterfly rather than add them. This is called butterfly prune, and it can be a great strategy. By the way, butterflies have no inherent point value of their own. They simply allow you to raise the level of a stack, thus earning more points. So, we do love the butterflies, but weeds are pretty cool too. Weeds are attack tiles. You play them on an opponent at the beginning of your turn. There is a skip weed, which skips an opponent's next turn, And there's a take two weed, which allows you to steal 2 tiles from an opponent's tray. These tiles are now bonus tiles, and you get to play them as your own on any turn. Your opponent does not get to replenish their tray until after they've taken their turn. So we have now covered the function of all tiles. It's now time to talk about ending the game when any player has played the last flower from their own color cluster. The game immediately ends. The player with the highest accumulated score is the winner. And that is Peduncle. Straightforward, simple, but with a few clever twists that stack up the excitement. Now, I promised that I would explain the numbers in the center of each flower. They definitely are convenient for identifying various flowers, but there is a bit more to them, and that little bit might help you play a better game. You may have already figured out that a lot of those central numbers are mathematically related. Some of those numbers are, in fact, multiples of others. Here is the precise relationship. This great game Peduncle is built, on a covert foundation of prime factorization. Each light green tile represents a factor of 2. Notice that the picture on the light green tiles have 2 leaves. Each dark green tile represents a factor of 3. Notice that the picture on a dark green tile has 3 leaves. The number in the center of the flower is the product of all the factors that are represented by those leaves around the flower. For example, 2 times 3 equals 6. So to complete a number 6 tile, you must place a light green leaf, which represents 2, and a dark green leaf, which represents 3. So 2 times 3 equals 6. When you stack a flower, each stacked flower is a multiple of each flower beneath it. So, for example, you can play a number 12 flower on top of that 6th flower because 12 is a multiple of 6, as in 6 times 2 equals 12. If you prefer thinking in terms of prime factorization, you'll recognize that 12 is made up of the factors 2 times 2 times 3. It's really very simple. But just remember, no one needs math skills to succeed at Peduncle. After all, it is just a matching game. Now, some people will enjoy the math, other people will not. Different brains have different reasoning styles, and there is no one right way to plan your next move. All right, before wrapping up, I just want to cover a few rules of note. Okay, first of all, flowers must connect to at least one leaf on the table, and flowers may never connect to another flower. You may play only 1 flower per turn unless you Peduncle. Tiles are played only from your tray, except, of course, for the tiles that are taken from another player. You may play those right away, or you may play one of those right away. And you must replenish your tray before your next turn. Here's something super important. Newly placed flowers and leaves cannot mess up the leaf count of another flower already on the table. You cannot prune and add leaves on the same turn. You cannot play a flower on top of an identical flower, even if you separate them with a butterfly. It hurts when you get attacked, so here are a couple rules on attacking. Only 1 weed can be played on any player at any given time. And an attacked player must be allowed to play at least 1 unencumbered turn before being attacked again by another weed. Tiles that are taken using a take 2 weed are bonus tiles. They do not count as part of the 8 tiles allowed on your tray. When a player gets hit with a skip weed, the scorekeeper immediately records a 0 for that player's next score. This helps keep track of the skip within that round. It's easy to lose that. All right, that is Peduncle. This video has shown you the engaging play and process of Peduncle. For answers to any other questions that you might have, please refer to the included rules sheet or contact me directly at the email that is listed on the rules sheet. And there you go. Happy Pedunkling!